Now we're going to be going over the ArmorWall system, its component and accessories to be able to complete the ArmorWall system. We'll also be going over a little bit of maybe some test certifications and tools, finishing it all up and just looking how it compares to a conventional wall and how we play with cladding on exterior wall. But like I said, before we get started, I want to go into the tools, right? ArmorWall is a new technology, it's a new product. It does a lot for you in the design stage. But we always like to show some relation to how day-to-day install and common products are used and how we relate to them. So a couple of the tools that we're going to need a saw to be able to cut the panel. Because the armor board sheathing has a structural component and quality to it and density, you wouldn't be able to cut it with, let's say, a precision knife. However, you can use any type of saw to just be able to do your cuts. In this particular case, I'm holding a circular saw. As to what type of blade, you can use any type of blade. If you were to ask me for my preference, I always like a carbide or a diamond tip blade. They'll cut a little bit smoother, they last a little bit longer in the field. However, it's not something you would need, just a regular saw would do. Another big tool that we would need, the great and fancy sausage gun. Now, we'll get into, like I said, the component and accessories a little bit later, but we do have a sealant accessory for our ArmorWall system. That comes in 20-ounce sausages, right? So we're going to use a sausage gun. The type of application, nothing dissimilar to any other sealant application. We want to go in a zigzag fashion. Once we apply it or tool it on the wall, we do like to see 35 mils of wet sealant before it cures. Plus minus 5 mils. We like to give you a little bit of leeway there. But keep in mind, just 35 mils of the sealant wet when applied. How do you apply it? With a typical sausage gun. Again, you ask my preference. I'd rather have a motorized one that does all the work for me, but regular gun works just as well. Focusing on the sealant, something else that we need are going to be our putty knives or trowels. Again, to apply or tool the sealant onto the wall. Now here's a good stopping point because I always like to mention one of the big pros or value propositions of ArmorWall is that it encompasses a lot of layers of your exterior wall, right? So it cuts down on materials, it cuts down on labor, it cuts down or it increases speed. However, it also gives the opportunity for contractors or installers to be able to tackle some scopes of work on the exterior wall that they typically don't. Good example is if you were to take a commercial drywall builder, right? They're used to installing some type of substrate, typically metal studs, and some type of common sheet good on the market. Well, they can go ahead and install ArmorWall. However, they also get the opportunity to be able to tackle the building envelope, enclosing that building envelope. And it would include our sealant, which sometimes they're not typically used to installing. So with an approach like that, what we like to do at DuPont is that we like to be a little bit proactive. So not only can you use a typical trowel or putty knife, we will also 3D print for you a sealant applicator. And the cool thing about this is that it will give you the right width of sealant that we require or expect to see as a finished product, as well as the right millage. So for those newer installers or people that are a little bit inexperienced, we got your back. We ultimately want to be able to support you just so you have the best finished product possible. Moving on, another tool that we're going to need is a good old insulation knife. What do we use it for? It's a good stopping point in this conversation. We're going to use it for the outside corners and how we finish our outside corners. I'm going to bring two little props here just so you can see. How do we treat our outside corners? Well, what we do is we use a weave approach or installation practice. This gives us two, in my opinion, two really good advantages. One, cuts out all the craftsmanship. So you don't have to focus on a specific finish aesthetic. Once you have your wall installed. Two, it makes a very easy, continuous, what I call fire plane. So for your fire requirements, there's nothing special or no new accessory that you need to put to be able to have a continuous firewall or fire plane along your exterior wall once you finish. If we zoom in right here real quick, we can zoom in, we can see how do we achieve that. All we do is that we're gonna notch out and cut out with the insulation knife. We're gonna cut out the depth the insulation, we're going to cut it out at the depth of the adjacent panel. In this particular case, just like I have here, we have a 2-inch panel. So all we're going to do is we're going to cut out the insulation 2 inches deep, and then we just butt, like I showed, the panels together. So that's all we need that tool for. And again, removes all the craftsmanship, sets up the installer for success. Lastly, very important tool that we use is going to be our drills, right? Now our drills is another good stopping point to focus on a little bit. What do we allow for our sheathing fasteners, which we're going to get on a little bit later on? For our sheathing fasteners, we allow either an impact drill, a typical your common drill, or a deck gun that you can adjust its RPMs. I always give or preface by saying an impact drill will wear out your sheathing fasteners a little bit faster. It's not a component of our fasteners, it's just mechanically how the impact drill works. But as long as the installer is aware of that, they could just go ahead and use it and have the install. Again, we try to set them up for success. In case of our cladding fasteners, which we're gonna get on a little bit later, but let me just focus here real quick. We have Ludovici, it's a terracotta tile, it's one of our partners for cladding. You can see one of our fasteners there. For cladding fasteners, we do not allow the impact drill. So that's a good takeaway from this conversation. We're gonna allow the regular drill or a deck gun that you can adjust to its RPMs to 2000 RPMs. Now, for tools, that's all we have. Everything is very common, so hopefully it relates. New technology, new product, but it's very easy to install, very easy to adapt. Now, moving to its accessories. Like we mentioned, my colleague mentioned that we have to be able to have a continuity in the air, water, and vapor barrier, and we want to be able to close your building envelope. So with that in mind, aside from the ArmorWall panels that my colleague presented, we also have a sealant and a flashing tape. Our sealant is going to be our Liquid Armor FJ. It's a flashing and joint compound. It's a very permeable STPE, elastomeric sealant. It works, as its name entails, as a flashing and joint compound. And where do we use it? Well, we're going to use it anywhere that you have a seam. So if we want to use the wall as an example, you can see it clearly. We're going to use it as in the butt seam between the two panels. We're going to use it in an inside corner, as we see here. We're also going to use it in an outside corner to treat that corner that we talked about earlier. We're also going to use it to treat the sheathing fasteners. Good point, a good stopping point there. Take away sheathing fasteners because they're going through the substrate, they're going to need the sealant. The cladding fasteners, which we'll get into later, do not. And then transition areas to other materials. A good example here is on our flashing tape, how we transition at the seam of sealant to tape and then the header. The other component that we have to be able to close our system and thus the building envelope, it's going to be DuraGuard WD. This is our primerless, self-adhered flashing tape. We're very proud of it. It is very malleable. It stretches. It is still very robust. It won't tear or break on you. So it is a product that we're very proud of because it truly sets up that installer for success to have a very clean, fast install and achieve that in closing that building envelope. Moving on from those, and to summarize that enclosure building envelope is the other two products that we have, or accessories, are going to be our fasteners. Now, I don't know if we can close up to these, but one of them is going to be a sheathing fastener. The other one is going to be our cladding fastener. The sheathing fastener is going to install the sheathing to the substrate, and its length is determined by two things. One is going to be the depth of the panel, given that we have different R values, the thickness of the panel increases. And the other variable would be the substrate, whether it's metal, wood, concrete, or CMU. The length will vary to be able to install the panel properly and acquire the desired performance. As to the dimensions specifically, you don't have to worry about that. Like my colleague said, I belong to the BKC team. We'll be more than happy to help you guys at any level of your project, whether it's design stage, all the way to putting the fasteners on the wall with the installer, and we'll be able to figure those out with you. Going to the cladding fastener now. Here again, we're going to use an example for one of our partners, Ludovici terracotta tiles. There's two takeaways for this fastener. One, like we said, we want to be able to limit or not use impact drills in general. Two, that we published two fasteners, right? In all our documentation that you can find at DuPont.com, you'll see that we published two fastener options for cladding. However, it's worth noting and takeaway that we have an expansive matrix of fasteners that go through our fastener protocol that we continuously add to be able to provide you guys answers for different cladding types, project locations, or any other variable that you might be challenged with, and we can help you solve. Lastly, it is important to note that because our cladding fasteners go into the sheathing and do not go through the insulation. They really truly maintain that continuous insulation clean. So your energy derating of the building through the cladding will decrease, or it'll be somewhere around 3%, which makes your theoretical model for energy and your practical installation pretty much equal. It's also worth note to take away that both our sheathing and our cladding fasteners go through a rigorous internal protocol with certifications or standards such as ASTM D1761, ASTM B117, or QUV UV exposure. So those would be some structural, some electromechanical or corrosion tests, and obviously UV exposure. So how do we summarize everything, right? We covered the products or accessories that you need to be able to enclose your building envelope that compile our whole system. We talked about the air, water, and vapor barrier, the energy efficiency, the structural, and the fire wall that we have. So a good example to visually see how all of this actually translates into a project, we're gonna go here real quick and see another one of our partners. Here's a good example of a Ceraclat rain screen system. This is a fiber cement rain screen system. And the good thing about a product like this is that it gives you a lot of good aesthetic looks, a lot of good finishes, high in performance, and very competitive in cost. How do they achieve that is one of the ways is that they have modular sizes, right? So they give you all that, but they have specific dimensions into which their panels come in. In the case of this one, we're looking at about 17 7/8 in width panel. We're gonna call it 18 inches to keep things simple. And as you can see, if your choice was to be able to design, or you're trying to achieve an aesthetic look in installation where you have the panels vertically, well, now you're challenged, because at an 18-inch offset, if we go to a more traditional wall, I think it's pretty clear you're not going to be able to hit that stud. So how does that affect your commercial wall? Well, for an ArmorWall project, not at all. ArmorWall provides a full surface area for structural attachment. That means that your installer can install anywhere he sees fits, or anywhere he needs to achieve the installation properly. And as an architect, it also allows you to expand your vision of how you want to install that cladding. So in the case of ArmorWall, all you have is ArmorWall. You'll have their rail at the bottom. You put the panel, and then you put the clips anywhere that you need to put them, whether you're trying to hit an installation requirement, some type of performance certification based on a test, or just construction tolerance, right? Sometimes we're challenging the field. When you go to a traditional wall, now you start seeing when things start hitting speed bumps, right? To be able to achieve the similar wall, just like my colleague mentioned, a 1-hour firewall with a traditional wall, now you're looking to add your gypsum sheathing, right? We're gonna need that WRB for your air and water and vapor barrier. And now you hit what I call is your first speed bump. You're gonna need a furring to push out and be able to accommodate for the insulation. Now that furring, while it's not shown exactly this way here, to be able to comply with the energy code, you're gonna need that to be thermally broken. That is an additional third-party testing and engineered material that is gonna add cost and a little bit of more labor practice to be able to install properly. Now you have then the insulation, which is again worth stopping and mentioning. The insulation, while we call it continuous insulation, it's not gonna be truly continuous as you see with ArmorWall. It's gonna be broken up by that furring laterally. Once you have that insulation, you can go into what I call run-of-the-mill furring. So in this case, a hatch channel. What I mean by that is anything you can buy like in a building material supply, but yet it's another material that you add. And once you lay that out, then you can install the cladding with the aesthetic look that you're trying to achieve. Even then, it's worth noting that the layout will be a little bit more time consuming, given that the vertical or the track for the vertical installation needs its own furring, but then you got to offset not at a consistent dimension the first clip. After that, you will be able to space it out, probably at a consistent spacing, but where the panel ends, you have a compression joint for the building, or you have a change in aesthetics, you're gonna have to break again and offset with another furring. So all in all, you're looking at, as a summary, you're looking about 3 to 4 revolutions around the wall and finish your product versus anything from 6 to 8. So and that's where we have that big value proposition of time, cost, and labor.